The New York judge, Judge Maron, says Donald Trump is not immune from the hush money conviction case. Remember that one with that Stormy Daniels lady who they paid $130,000 to sort of try to go away about 10 days before Donald Trump was elected the president of the United States. And the reason he did so at the time, he said, was because, first of all, he didn't think he was going to win. Like Nate Silver, by the way, remember him? ABC bought his unit. He's now on his own, and his polling's gotten a lot better. What do you know, since he went out on his own? But Nate Silver had zero chance of Donald Trump winning. And Donald Trump at the time was very concerned about what these allegations would mean for his relationship with his family, specifically one Melania Trump, his wife. And so $130,000 was paid to effectively make this whole story go away. And this then turned into a gigantic case against the former president, now president-elect. So the thinking is, really, amongst legal scholars, and I don't purport to be one, but I have some common sense, which seems to be rather lacking in these various fields these days. But when it comes to Trump anyway, you can't really go after him for this personal matter, which is completely legal. I mean, maybe it's distasteful, but it's completely legal. So he wanted this story to go away. She was paid off $130,000. And they're trying to say, well, it was campaign funds. Well, even if it was campaign funds, let's go there for a moment. Let's just humor them and say, okay, it was campaign funds. That would actually be a federal case. And in this particular situation, Alvin Bragg doesn't have the authority to bring the federal case. That would have been one Jack Smith, but Jack Smith declined to bring that case because he said he didn't have a case. By the way, Jack Smith's two other cases, he'd take a case wherever he could get one. They've gone bye-bye. They've gone away along with Jack Smith. But this thing is hanging on for dear life. And what's really troubling is not just the fact that Judge Maron is not willing to let it exit stage left, but when you think about what went down in the trial itself and the way he presented the jury a smorgasbord, pick A, B, C, or D, it was a multiple choice operation. It doesn't matter what Donald Trump might be guilty of. It only matters that you find him guilty. Think about that. Think about how crazy that is. And I don't have to tell you how crazy it is. Let's go to an actual legal scholar, Jonathan Turley, who at the time, this would have been March 31st, 2024, was like, this is terrible. I mean, this is terrible for New York. What does this say about our legal system? Here he is.
What happened in that courtroom became superfluous because of those instructions. Some of us were hoping for a hung jury because we hoped that the jury might redeem the New York legal system, which is one of the greatest legal systems in the world. And as these last few weeks have left many of us shocked as to what we saw in that courtroom. But that was not going to happen after the instructions were finalized. And I wrote a column after I saw the instructions saying it had the feel of a canned hunt, where you can shoot game in a small space. The space was very small for the defense to maneuver, and even smaller, it seemed, for the jury to acquit. So I don't blame the jury at all. I think that what they heard in that room probably made it seem to many of them that this was a lead pipe cinch of a conviction. They heard over and over again the prosecutors say that there were election violations committed by Donald Trump, that he ordered Cohen to commit the violations he pled guilty to. That totally smashed the instruction that Maron had given. And Maron just sat there. There was no response. So what do you think the jury is going to rule? And then when you tell them, just pick a crime among the three, you don't have to agree. Just pick one of these crimes. If you think that secondary crime was behind all of this, you're good to go. But to this day, most of us don't know what the jury decided, because we know that they unanimously voted to convict. We don't know what they convicted him of. They could have disagreed 4-4-4 on what occurred in this case. That's one of the first things that I think a court will look at for reversal.
Yeah, without a doubt. A huge constitutional issue. I would argue a Sixth Amendment one.
It's unbelievable. It's really, I just got to tell you, it's atrocious in every way. And we haven't even gotten into the bias that Maron may have had given his daughter's position as a Democrat fundraiser. And she was literally fundraising, getting a percentage of the proceeds every time a new development would happen in this legal case that her dad was presiding over, she'd get a percentage of the proceeds. So wouldn't it make sense for Maron to recuse himself, just given the familial ties? Like, you'd think so. But he's got such a big ego, he wants to sit over this thing and preside over this thing. And now we're in a situation where he's like, no, I have absolute authority. It doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says. To which I'm like, it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says. Gosh, you guys are really trying to set up a scenario where it is state versus federal. It is state versus the Supreme Court, which I hate to break it to you, but it is the law of the land. Okay? The law of the land. So you can sit there all you want and say, oh, I'm not afraid, just like Letitia James does, but you should be afraid.
I will not fear Donald Trump. I have steel in my backbone. And the reality is I will not allow this person, Donald Trump, who unfortunately is a broken man, to get in the way of progress and to separate us.
No. So she won't drop her case either. So you get Maron saying, the Supreme Court doesn't have any sway here. You've got Letitia James saying, I'm going for it because it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court decides. I would say this, Maron still has an opportunity to just dismiss this altogether, but he's not doing that. Ask yourself why. One, because yes, he wants the Civil War, New York versus the rest of the country, and he also wants power, and New York wants power. These are power-hungry people that want to basically hold this thing over Donald Trump and the Republicans' head for the next 4 years. Oh, we don't like the way you do this, that, and the other. Guess what? We're going to take those charges back, and we're going to send you straight to jail. I mean, he wouldn't eventually go to jail only because there is no case there. And you heard Turley say, this thing should be thrown out because in part the jury's instructions that they were given, which were so absolutely ludicrous. But it speaks volumes about where these people are trying to take our country. And you got to think long and hard about that. They are selfish individuals that hate Trump so much, that are so scared about what is about to happen vis-a-vis the slimming down of the massively bureaucratic government, vis-a-vis an actual enforcement of our border, vis-a-vis going after the quote-unquote deep state that tried to frame Donald Trump over and over and over again, which means, by the way, going after you, Maron, going after you, Letitia James, because you tried to bankrupt him. That was your mission. That is what you campaigned upon, lady. And then when you made sure that the judge had a nearly $500 million fine against him, you said, well, we'll just take his properties, right? Unbelievable.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court. And we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
And what's crazy is that she's still doing this. She had an opportunity. The Trump team went to her and said, hey, would you throw this out? Would you rescind your case? She said, no, I have every right to bring this. Well, the Court of Appeals is going to toss it out because the Court of Appeals knows better. I played you guys. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen. I think last week we played a big chunk of that trial in Friday's show because it's like, wow. I mean, they see it. They know she has no case. She thinks she can interfere between the valuation that Deutsche Bank and an individual happens to be given various properties. She thinks she knows how much Mar-a-Lago is worth. It's $19 million at best, according to Letitia James. Of course, Joy Behar thinks her nice little, cute little, that little Victorian 4,000 square footer in Sag Harbor, that's apparently worth $10.5 million according to Joy. But you know what? It's worth whatever anybody's going to pay for it. That's the reality. That's why you can't have a Letitia James interfering saying, well, I think it's worth this or I think it's worth that. It's worth whatever anybody is going to pay. It is worth whatever the bank that's actually lending the money thinks it's worth because they're the ones that are on the hook, not you, Letitia. Okay, so you need to stay the HELL out of there or else you're going to find your your tush in the slammer faster than you think. Benny Davis' show here.
Let me just say this to Big Tish James, the New York Attorney General. I dare you to try to continue your lawfare against President Trump in his second term. Because listen here, sweetheart, we're not messing around this time, and we will put your fat ass in prison for conspiracy against rights. And I promise you that.
So I just had to play that because you know I'm not going to say that. So I'm going to let Mike Davis say it. My sentiments, exactly. You're going to find your fat, you know what, so fast in the slammer, honey, because you're just so, but here's the real question that I keep getting back to, and I want answers to, because how much of this was actually also being orchestrated by the likes of the Biden administration? Now that Biden isn't there anymore, that's why New York, you see, is clinging on. That's why Letitia won't let her case go. That is why Maron is not going to let it go, because they want some kind of leverage. Hey, we're going to throw you in jail if you don't do, or we're going to fine you $500 million. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Here's Garland being asked by one Matt Gaetz, do you have any transcripts? Is there any information that might suggest you were colluding with Letitia, Alvin, or one Fannie Willis down in Georgia? Actually, I don't have that for you, but he's been all over this. And he asked Garland, and Garland's looking at him like he's some kind of conspiracy theorist, because you're apparently a conspiracy theorist, you know, if you believe any of this. I can think of a lot of stories now at this point at which you were deemed a conspiracy theorist if you dared to think any of this. But this woman actually thinks that she has a case. And that's frightening.
At the end of the day, the documentary evidence demonstrated that, in fact, he falsely inflated his assets to basically enrich himself and his family. He continued to persistently engage in fraud. The numbers don't lie.
And you know what's crazy about that? Is that you have judges that are so biased and so awful. In that particular case, a judge, Arthur Erdogan, that they're slapping a $500 million fine on this thing. The Court of Appeals, they got to get their tails moving fast, because this is actually putting the president in a very challenging position. What, he's got to watch his every move now because Letitia's like lurking in the corner about to hit him with a $500 million? This is nuts for a case that honestly needs to get thrown out as of yesterday. Literally makes no sense. She's talking about the numbers that don't lie. The numbers don't lie. Okay, the numbers, actually, if you look at them, show that Mar-a-Lago had revenue of some $57 million a year. So I don't know why you're willing to sell the thing for 18, 19, honey. I realize that legal education didn't have a lot of math in it. Letitia, wise up. She's a dumb woman doing dumb stuff. Alvin Bragg, another dummy, doing dumb stuff. Fannie, we know is a dummy. Tasting men alone, clearly. Not a lot going upstairs in Fannie Willis's case. And in Fannie Willis's case, we're now finding that, yes, absolutely, the boyfriend, the BF, was traveling up on taxpayers' dime, up to the White House to sit down and discuss this case against our now president-elect. So this stuff has to stop, unless this is where will they want a civil war? That's what this is about. I'll tell you, New York, you know what? Go get Trudeau. I hear he's looking for a job. Canada's about to get rid of Trudeau. Wait till you see that. We're going to get to that a little bit later in the show. But you know what? You've talked to one of your state senators who's talking about splitting off you and Connecticut and a few other ultra-liberal states that want to. You go get Trudeau, okay? Go join Canada, if he can even make it that long, because even Canada's sick of the libs. And form your own little thing, because I'll tell you, everything's being rerouted to Florida and Texas, in place where they actually welcome businesses. The Texas Stock Exchange, that's a new one that just came about. And hey, you think about Bitcoin and the changes that could be coming in the financial system. Do we really need the New York Stock Exchange anymore, and Letitia James and her crazy lawsuits, and Judge Maron and Judge Erdogan and Alvin Bragg and the rest of them? Short answer, no. But they're the ones doing this. They're the ones setting the stage for a conflict. A conflict that, you know what, America doesn't deserve and America doesn't need. We voted for Donald Trump for a reason.